One real life. Hello, good
Good
morning.
morning. Welcome to the Spiritual Hour podcast. My name is Gina.
And I'm Anna. To see everybody or not see you, I don't know.
And welcome to today's episode. We'll be talking about Gnosticism, I believe.
hmm
Gnosis. This
hmm
one? Okay, so I employed extra strategic research for this one. Only use one
Yes.
source. I know that's may seem like, Gina, that's not smart, but I only use one source this time. And I think it really paid off. It's not exactly the format that I followed in the past, meaning I'm always doing creation myths or just stories. It's completely different, so just kind of be aware
Oh,
of it's not the normal structure for me. I don't know about you, but yeah, for me it's more so of me taking notes on a lecture. So it's not going to be
okay.
structured in that almost strategic way of like explaining, okay, this happened and this happened. So yeah, but before we get started, let's sage and then
Mhm.
let's pull our card
Yeah.
today. Honestly,
Okay.
I saw a card and I'm going to take it because I'm feeling this energy right now. And this is what
Ooh.
gnosis is about actually to a certain degree. So we have on the bottom of the deck, which I pulled, but it resonates, affirmations, speech, how you talk
Mm.
to yourself, how you what you program into your body via speech. And I'm
hmm
just really beginning to understand how almost critical it is. Like almost like it can be your speech in your life can help you or it can sink you basically. And
hmm
I'm coming into that crystal clear understanding. And I feel that is reflected in at least the notes that I have today. So that's why I picked this card. So yeah, today we
I
have
love it.
questions. What are you telling yourself? And also, this is a fact. When you speak to crystals negatively, they make ugly crystals or little like formations or whatever. But when you speak
hmm
positively to them, they form beautiful crystals. So I think that's
hmm
also something to be noted. And we're
Yeah.
what 60% water. So yeah.
It's the same thing with plants. Like they did a study where it's like they like wrote down words and then attached it to the pot, and then as it was like becoming like from a seedling to like an actual plant, then like it was weaker than the other one that had like positive words on it, and that one was like full and lush. It grew
So
faster than the
yeah.
other one. It's so fucking true, so true.
And yeah, like for me, just before we get started officially, I know that I've had this like almost perpetual negative inner monologue for like not perpetually negative, but I would say definitely more leaning towards negativity. And so it's been interesting me setting that, but again, just knowing from this, but then also in general, and then from scientific studies, like what you mentioned, and like what I mentioned, how important it is how you talk to yourself. So yeah.
hmm Yes. Good thing to start off with, especially with this topic today.
Yes. So, how would you like to present today? Because I know
Ah,
that again, it's the format is a little bit different, and I'm
mhm.
gonna just infer that you had difficulty finding any information at all. And exactly. So yeah, I already know. Yeah, I already know. So yeah, this one is going to be interesting, like you said, because there's not a lot of information on narcissism. A lot of it,
A lot of
um,
it is like really conflicting, and then also because there's different sext, yeah, different like groups of like people that like believe in narcissism. So depending on what they say can be different from what another group says.
mm,
So take that into consideration while we present this to you. Um,
mm,
I think you should go first, and then like because I don't have too much, so I'll just kind of like fill in whatever because I feel like that's usually how it
what
goes
we do,
between
yeah.
us. Yeah, so so I think you should go ahead and go first, and then we'll just go
All
from
right.
there.
So in my presentation, it should be noted that really what was explored was the concept of narcissism and not the religion or the practicing of it itself. So,
hmm
what the person that I got this information from is his name is Rudolf Steiner. I've mentioned him, I think, once or twice before on the podcast. So, first, just knowing that everyone people can have controversy surrounding themselves. this person is no different. However, I like the information that he provides, and it's weird with his information. It's almost like I come to realization, and then I go to his information, and then his information kind of says what I have come to in a different way. And so that's why I like his information, not all of it. Again, and also if you agree with anyone 100%, maybe you should check that, because I find that honestly, especially when you have gurus and stuff, you don't agree with anyone 100%, rarely, if ever. So it's also that aspect as well. If you do, something's wrong, and you should probably check it out. But anyway, this guy, I love his information, and so this is what I based my notes on. And just letting you know, it may seem incoherent, jumpy, but I'm going to try to piece together what he said, because this man is also, to give him a little bit of backstory, he studied mathematics and astronomy, I believe. So it's like his brain, that's when you study that kind of stuff, your brain is slightly different a little bit. So I think it reflects a lot in his work, was some of the concepts are just a little bit hard to understand. But beginning, finally. All right, so he begins with explaining logic in relation to gnosis. And logic is to find one's way consciously in the world. And according to his penetration of the mysteries, what he calls it, according to him, he reads from Akashic records. And if you're familiar with spirituality, you know, Akashic records are basically like a library or a big compilation of universal information that you can almost project your consciousness into and be a receiver of information, a transmitter of information. And I'm assuming this is what he did. But anyways, continuing here. According to him, before it was logic, what we consider to be logic, was present more unconsciously. And we can understand the transition from that process to our current understanding of logic from from our development of speech. So when we're an infant and then we learn speech, and also when we go from prepubescent to adolescent. So basically just describing that transition logic in that way. So almost like a parallel, so to speak. All right, so continuing here. He explains gnosis as the soul activity in outer nature. So basically almost perceiving your soul in outer nature. And I feel that this is something that I can understand, but basically it's like he views it these two ways: human beings existing and present within the universal spirit and soul, versus the human being dwelling with the universal spirit and soul and time. So there's just like Gnosticism, in my opinion, is the expression of spirit and soul in all aspects of life. And I think that was what he was really trying to highlight here. And he continued to go on with saying basically, we developed from this religion developed because we had this intrinsic understanding of the universe, and that was basically what was being expressed to them. Mm-hmm. So it was more organic, and that is how Gnosticism sprang forth in a certain sense, from a really organic, instinctual understanding of the universe. So it's like, even trying to conceptualize Gnosticism is very, very interesting, because it's so abstract, but in a very all-encompassing way.
Yeah.
And basically, he says that a lot of this was developed, and not all in one area, but the Greek area was very, very prominent. With learning, having the I guess ability or something to understand. I don't know, it's worded really weird. And also the Oriental peoples as well. So Asian area, in that area. and he highlights the fourth BCE. So I view it as in my head -4, but like 4 BCE, I think that would be correct to say it that way. And then 4 AD. So like that was the period, that transition I was describing in the beginning, where we transitioned from more so of an instinctual understanding to more so of a logical understanding. But we have to also understand that in our development of logical facilities, what we consider to be logical today, we completely cut ourselves off from spirit. And so I feel that Gnosticism is almost a complete combination of a raw understanding of spirit and also the ability to logically be able to comprehend spirit as well, and thus seeing spirit in everything. And
Exactly.
he also says that the soul descends to unite with the corporeal nature, meaning our soul descends to unite with our bodies. And like I was saying, we understood instinctually, but this insight has been diminished. And he says that we have diminished this through the process of speech, because it's almost like, for what we understand speech as almost labeling something, or a label per se, or just in a very how did he describe it? Give me a second, because a little bit all over the place here. Sorry, I should have done this. Basically, he says that speech was how we acquired speech almost made us lose our sensitivity to spirit in a certain sense. And by way, our logical nature also impacting our understanding. So to wrap it up, or not to wrap it up, I guess, but really, Gnosticism is a raw understanding of spirit that we are able to completely apply our logic to.
His video is very abstract based, because like I'm piecing together what you're saying with what I found, and it's very similar, but he's using more, like I said, more abstract, more conceptualized, I guess terminology.
Yeah, and that's why people don't like him, because he's so hard to understand. It's like almost like it's I don't want to sound pretentious, but I feel like with his work, you almost have to have like a benchmark understanding, and then you can kind of like proceed. And that's why for a long time I would not delve into his work, because I'm like, I just did not resonate with it. When all of a sudden I did, and I could understand why it took me a while to fully like resonate with him. And you may or may not resonate with him. If you don't, he's not your person. But again, it's like you just have to almost be an initiate. It's like, if you don't want to make spirituality seem like a competition, or like, but it is very stage oriented, meaning it's almost like it is level. You have level 1, and then you have level 50. And I would say Rudolf Steiner is he's pretty advanced knowledge. So yeah.
Yeah, he's interesting. I do like how he's putting it into those terms, but it is a little confusing. Had I not done like the research that I did, I would have been like, huh? I don't fully understand.
Well, and
But go ahead.
And it's also so weird for me, because as he's explaining it, it's almost like I'm always having bursts of realization. And it's almost like, I honestly feel I was alive during that century or something, because I have experienced Gnosticism, but not with the label of it. So like I know that spirit resides in everything. And like I didn't necessarily penetrate into the soul aspect of things, but I'm sure I knew that intuitively, just like he was saying, more so instinctually versus consciously. And yeah, I would say that, but I definitely like had, at least now, I've had this understanding that spirit is everything. It's what we perceive to be bad and good. It's all. You can't separate. You can't separate wet from water. You can't separate heat from fire. That's what Gnosticism is, in a certain sense. How we are inseparable, no matter if we seem separated. And I definitely agree with that.
Yes, because basically what I found, the basic core beliefs of Gnosticism are that the creation story in the Bible happened, but they don't believe that that God in the Bible created the world. He more did it in an indirect way because they feel that it doesn't make any sense for a God who's all-knowing, you know, all-powerful, can create evil. That just wouldn't happen. So I find that to be interesting because that's something that I've always thought about, that for me just didn't really make any sense. How if God is literal perfection and all knowing and omnipotent, how
It's so weird you're saying that because literally like yesterday night I watched a video and like the lady was literally giving the verbatim and this really odd sense of your exact same.
was it a black girl?
Yeah, her name is like Shira7 or something.
Oh no, it's funny because like I've always thought of this before, but I follow this girl on TikTok and her handle is Jasmine's Garden, and she has delved into it.
The preacher's daughter.
Yes, her. She's delved into it before, but like now she's kind of like bringing that like series back of like Christianity, like deconstruction. And I'm everything that she said, I'm just like, yes, exactly. Like it just never made any sense to me how if one, our God, our Christian God, is all knowing and all powerful, how could he create something that was not perfect? We're created in his image, are we not? And then I enjoyed the fact that she also called into question his ego, because I'm like, I feel like it's very egocentric.
You're gonna hurt someone's feelings, Dave.
I know.
Sometimes that.
I know. And then, but like, I've always thought about that because it just doesn't make any sense. Because if you're perfect, why would you ever create imperfection? You already know what imperfection is. Because some people were like, oh, well, maybe he wanted to like know what it was. And then she brought up a good point where it's like, no, he's perfection. He's all knowing. He already knows what imperfection is. Why the fuck would he need to create it? I'm like, exactly. So
it's very paradoxical and also redundant. But also one scripture that completely like blows my mind and like kind of evaporates all scripture in a certain sense is it's I'm going to say it the way I remember it. So excuse me. A is for all. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Glory of God. Romans 3:23, I believe. So all, meaning even Jesus? And I'm like, wait, what? How can that be in the Bible? And we have Jesus being the perfect man and evil. It's like, what is this all? Who is all? Like, I need more information. So yeah. He also, this guy here delves into how we should read the Bible. Basically, he says clairvoyantly, because we will not understand the Bible if we try to read it from our perspective as like human beings now, and also without a certain level of spiritual understanding. And I feel with his work again, like it comes off as so like you have to have this before you, in a certain sense it's almost like you have to walk before you can run. That's kind of how like I feel his content is in a certain sense. But yeah, that scripture always blew me away because I'm just like, who is this all? Is this Jesus? I thought Jesus was. I was just, and you know, you just too many questions that no one can answer. So you just understand that something is
amiss. Something's not right.
Yeah.
Because she also brings up the fact, and we had talked about this before. What's up with all the sacrifices? What's up with all the prove your loyalty to me?
And I was thinking honestly today. I'm like, if we read the Bible without like the moralistic context or like the deep moral implications, like just as a regular like Greek mythology, for example, we'd say, what the fuck? Excuse me.
For sure.
Because like we were saying, I think in the previous episode, the story with
Job?
No, Abraham and the one who was asked to sacrifice his son. Imagine are being commanded by someone to sacrifice your son, and you going ahead and your son, I'm not saying daughters are worth less, but your whole son who can like really extend your line and like give you like blessings, you will exterminate that.
Yep. For
Okay.
what?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, damn.
Hmm.
The
And
Bible's
then it's pretty wild. And then that's also why they're just like, no, that couldn't be. If the God was perfect, there's no way that there would be evil. There's no way that there. So that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of,
I have a deep question for you. So
yes.
what do you, okay, so evil. Do you think that, like, what do you think the implications of evil is?
Hmm. Oh, that is a good question. The implications, as in like the result or like the consequences of evil, or like what makes something evil.
Or like even the perceived reason for evil, I suppose, or even uh the origin.
Hmm. I think because I think the reason why I really like Zoroastrianism and Gnosticism is that it does touch upon like the duality of things. Even though with Gnosticism, they're a little bit more extreme because they're basically like
Describing that, and I'm like,
anything that's out of like the divine is like everything's like evil and like dirty and like unclean. And I don't necessarily agree with like that aspect of it, but more in terms of just like duality, I understand that there is two sides to like everything. So I'm more in line with like the Zoroastrianism aspect where it's like you have good, so you have bad. That's just how the universe works. You like there's even that myth of like why we have soulmates, or like why we feel like they're like twin flames or whatever, because like we were split from each other. I mean, even in, if you want to consider Christianity, Eve came from Adam's rib. So like we are one essentially. If you don't take into consideration that Lilith was before or whatever, but so like it's
I was like,
so
well,
you
what? But yeah, no, it took me a minute to understand Lilith. It took me a hot. I was like,
yeah,
Lilith.
because everything that you see in is like they just demonize the fuck
Nice.
out of her,
So
and
bad.
it's like, well, she just didn't want
Mhm.
to be a part of what you were trying to do, and like and then you're just like, oh, well, now you made her the mother of all demons, and I think that's kind of fucked up. Like,
Mhm.
that's weird, but whatever.
But yeah, I think this is also why it's important to like. This is a really important series almost because I'm understanding that the archetype of Lilith is even present in other cultures. So it's just, I mean, it's just an archetype, really. I mean, that they probably gave the name and then like bastardized or something. I don't know, but yeah, I'm also learning that a lot of our like he even explicitly expressed in his lecture, um, original Gnostic texts are lost, basically.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
knowledge that is available through those have basically the knowledge that we have. No, Gnosticism was eradicated by Christians, so very little is known, and that the knowledge that is available through those are through those who basically wanted to exterminate the religion. So it's like we don't know what the fuck is was
Yeah.
really going on
Exactly.
because the people who disseminate the information didn't want the
Got
information
rid
to
of it.
exist.
It's
So,
interesting because when I was looking it up, there's this guy. His name is Valentinius or Valentinus. And he's a Gnostic theologian, and pretty much all the like prevalent information that we have on Gnosticism kind of comes from him, even though a great majority is like lost, and then a lot of it is like it's like as if like you wrote something and then like you're no longer here, and then like I'm reiterating it. That's basically what happened to this guy. Like it's his information, like we have it, but now it's like a secondary source because other people were citing it, either because they agreed with it or because they were dissecting it and they didn't agree with it. So then they also put in their bias into it as well. So we don't really have a lot of information, but we do have like the Nag Hammadi, which is a Gnostic text. And then I believe he wrote some of the things in there as well. And then there's one other thing that I can't remember what it was called. Um, but basically, he kind of goes into more depth of it, and then kind of even gives way to like his own understanding of what it was. Basically, he believed that there was three kinds of people: the spiritual, which is the people that are like they are aware that there is like divinity in all things. Then you have the psychical and material. The psychical is basically like the ordinary Christians, I guess, where they, that's what it says. I put it in parentheses and I was like, ooh.
It's so funny to me because I feel that, especially in the spiritual community, we are so afraid of like labels, and we're so afraid of like things being in boxes. And back then, they're like, okay, this is what it is, and we're just going to say it like it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, damn, you just got called basic, basically. Like, except for you. But yeah, it's just interesting. And then the spiritual aspect is the gnosis, which is the knowledge, and that's what will give them that's what will allow them to return to the divine pleroma, which is the fullness. That's literally what it means in Greek. So the spiritual people, like, they have access to the gnosis, which access them to remember that they are divine. So they're going to go, back from where they came from. Because basically, Gnosticism believes that, like, we are separated from the divine and we're trying to find it again. And that we'll have people that come to help us find it, i.e. Jesus was one of them, and then the Holy Spirit is the other one that will help us, have that like revelation. Yeah, revelation of like, oh, like we're divine beings. We should not be here. We are trapped inside of these bodies, and we need to like get the fuck out, basically. And they even go as far as to be celibate and unmarried because they don't want to continue the cycle of spirits basically being trapped in human bodies. So it's so interesting because after that, Christian priests and like Catholic priests kind of took that idea of like celibacy and then applied it to their religion, but then like ignored exactly where that came from. They're like, oh, that's a good idea, we're gonna take that, but like it's like it's a Gnostic viewpoint. Like I feel like there's really no reason for like Christians and Catholic priests to not be married, but then they used it in a way to make themselves seem closer to God so they can control people a little bit more, like when they're that's a whole nother thing. That I went off on a different tangent when I was researching yesterday.
That's a tangent for me too, because I have a lot to. I will have a lot to say about that. I mean, like, yeah, but the timeline he gave was Gnosticism, Christianity, Catholic. So,
yeah, and then in between that, like Judaism, because there were some Gnostic Jews as well that believed in this.
It's crazy.
And basically, they also rejected any of like the Orthodox stuff. So they were like, we don't believe in church. We believe that like the divinity is within us and we have to find it. Like you're not going to find it outside, which I like as well, because I feel like, yeah, you do have that like higher help, but like it's definitely mostly going to come from within, which is also why I don't necessarily agree with like the Christian way of like, oh, give everything up to God. I'm like, but sometimes you gotta work for it, like, I don't know, that's just me. I've never really agreed with that.
Work with,
Yeah, I mean, like, work with the things around you, but like don't just be like expectant and be like, oh, well, he's gonna take care of everything, because I'm like, that motherfucker be like slipping sometimes. I don't know what he be doing. Like, he ain't here. But yeah, so continuing on, go ahead.
I'm trying to see what I missed here.
Mm-hmm.
He also talked about Aristotle and Plato, and I know we're going to do a series on them, series on like the great. So whenever we can stop talking about mythology finally.
I know. You should probably just like shoehorn it in. Maybe we do that next week in between this one and then Christianity, because I feel like it'll probably like bridge it more or link them better. I don't know.
I'm open. But yeah, and it's how different their views were, even though they came from the same. Basically, it's like, again, when you have like this understanding of spirit residing in everything, it kind of transforms how you think. And basically, when you apply that to like the logical mind, it somewhat shifts and transforms the logical mind. So what we perceive to be logic is very almost clumsy compared to what we could really do with the logical. So we have logic, but then logos. But then now we associate logos exclusively with logic, but really they're differing things. And apparently Aristotle was more logic and Plato was more logos. So I found that to be interesting. It's with him, and I feel like in general, it's like the small little distinctions that are made to almost like shift a concept into more so of something that's clear to perceive, even though it's still a gnarly concept.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
This whole thing is interesting because, like I was saying earlier, there's just a bunch of different groups of people that are Gnostic, and they don't necessarily all believe the same thing. Like,
it's
how
many sects that can develop from one idea is quite astounding. Even like when we think about Indian, whenever we make it there, we're going to be overwhelmed because there's so many. I know there's Vedanta, there's Sanskrit, and there's also Tantra. There's so many lineages.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so complicated. But also, that's what I was going to say. What makes me mad about this one is that there is clearly lack of research, and I feel for lack of information, and I feel that it's almost being like hidden from us. And I know that's so conspiracy, but I feel like it is because I feel that there's no way that this knowledge wasn't preserved. Like I feel that even though the ancients weren't easy to comprehend, they definitely preserved their wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
or at least made strides to. And according to him, a lot of wise men, basically, who are educated, of course, they have all the information. And I have no doubt that that's true because I just kind of have an intuitive understanding.
Yeah, basically. And then also, I think Gnosticism was doing too much in a good way because the Christian church or like the early Christians or whatever, they were like, yeah, nah, you want women to be priests? Because they were like, no, like women should be priests. There's no reason.
We're literally born from the womb being priestesses.
I know.
Powerful we are. Literally.
I know.
Many
and then, right? Yeah. And then also just the fact that like, well, all the priestess in, Greek they're all women, all the oracles. So it's just like, it was interesting how it just kind of like went from that to like very like heavily, male centric. But I feel like Gnosticism was just doing too much. And because I think Jesus Christ was talking to Paul. I think it was Paul the Apostle, and he gave like that extra information to him. I'm pretty sure it was either Paul or it was Thomas, but he gave like that extra information to one of them, and then it was like a secret, like mystery sort of a thing. So basically, that information, the Gnostics believe that was Jesus basically saying like, hey, we're all divine, and then that was the information that was passed down to only them. And then also supposedly Mary Magdalene also had that information because he told her before, I think before he died, before he was crucified, and then before he resurrected or something, like she somehow was able to get that information from him too. So basically the Gnostics are like, yeah, this is the information that, Jesus told Paul or Thomas. I'm pretty sure it was Paul. And I was like, yeah, we're all divine. We all we should not be here on this realm. Like we should be, you know, further up or whatever.
I feel
So
I feel that we should be in this realm, but I feel that we have transformed this realm into something that it wasn't supposed to be. Meaning, I feel that our cities are so unnatural to me. Like just being like, how can I don't? I mean, I know we live in LA, but it confuses me as to how people can like live there because it's so just unnatural.
it's so disconnected to everything, like
Yeah, and
everything that we do. I think I think everyone's lives in general are just kind of disconnected, and like you're starting to see that a little bit more because there is this thing that I heard where like some people don't know that bacon and ham come from pigs because they've never seen a pig, so they just go to like, you know, the grocery store and they're like, oh, it's bacon, but they don't make the connection of like bacon is pig. So like some people don't know that. So
are you
like when
serious?
I
Okay.
don't know how, but like I've heard it and I've heard it like multiple times. And then just the fact that like we can get fruit and like vegetables from different parts of the world and they're not in season and they come here, that's not supposed to be. Like we're supposed to be eating, I think we talked about this before. So there is definitely a disconnect between us and the land and what we're actually supposed to be doing. And then I think that like kind of messes with us like spiritually. Like it
Like those all
cuts us off.
truths basically
Yeah.
spirit, you know.
It
And then
cuts us off because like we're doing things in an unnatural way to us, but it's weird because like it developed naturally because that's the course of like humanity, I guess. It's like, well, the more technology you get, the easier things become for your life, but then also the more disconnected you become from everything else.
but also you say that, and I find it to be interesting that we're somehow segued to this topic here. Uh, Knowing he said something was dogmatized. You know how you take kind of like half the notes and then you get to the presentation. It's like, bro, what are you in there? But dogmatized is what I have written down, meaning just almost it's like fitting a square into a circle. You know, like just not right. And then basically during the eighth Ecumenical convention at Constantinople, the world and the human being basically were made not to be conceived of as being membered into body, soul, spirit, but only body and soul. So we were saying how things were just kind of became unnatural. So I thought it was like basically this was almost a written or ordainment, I guess, or something, or a written law that we're stripping you basically of your divinity. We're making you
That's interesting.
natural. So yeah. And I remember learning about that or something similar to that. So it's really interesting. And also instilling the Son, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, basically making everything patriarchal. And again, I'm not with these cute little words that scream empty nothings, you know, but I feel it's really, you really, when you're studying history, like, are we studying this stuff, I really am able to see how everything was definitely more almost matriarchal. And then someone was like, okay, let's make everything patriarchal. Let's see how
Yeah,
that,
basically.
and it's
Yeah.
almost like it caused a certain upliftment, and it caused, I feel, science and technology to advance, but also human civilization to decline because there is no connection to spirit. So like you're saying, it's almost like it was divine. I feel there's a certain aspect. I feel that there's divinity and evil, basically. I know that seems strange, but I feel that it's almost like we need opposition. Like even the hero needs the villain just as much as the villain like needs the hero, basically. Like it's a dualistic relationship, you know, and so I feel that's really expressed there.
I agree. I think that things were a little bit more balanced before, even though it was heavily like feminine energy, but like you had like a balance of things. I guess like it was I don't know, I just feel like at some point we kind of lost that balance and then it started to shift more to like patriarchal, which is fine because we did get a lot of
Beautiful.
advancement.
Got so many beautiful things from it. And I feel that it's also imperative that we not see the only negative in things,
Mm-hmm.
but also positive. So knowing that probably in matriarchal society, damn sure there were positives, but also
But
negatives as
also
well.
negatives,
And this is
exactly.
also, I think this kind of touches on Lemuria and Atlantis, how Lemuria was, or Mu as they call it, was more matriarchal, more feminine, and then Atlantis more science oriented, more technology advanced.
And as a side note, they both no longer exist. So that leads me to believe that you need some balance. I'm just saying, you can't be
Exactly. And that's like literally last night I have like this beautiful like heart chakra awakening, and I'm like, this is what balance means. I'm like, oh, it's like you can't exist in one or the other. It's both. And then they're like, you can't be good or evil. You have to be both. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like good people have, you know, the propensity to be evil, just like bad people have the propensity to be good. Like it's all within us at the same time.
Yeah. And I feel that's really what I feel that's what most intelligent religions will say. That's what most intelligent religions preach, is that we are both, and we almost have a choice to do both. But it's still saying that other side has to be acknowledged and almost, I don't want to say come out to play, but like just managed to some degree. I don't know what that looks like subjectively for everyone else, but I know what that looks like for me. So maybe developing what that looks like for you. But yeah.
I agree. It's all about that balance, being centered with yourself, but then also with like, you know, the outside world and like nature and stuff.
And that's for me, I'm like learning more about like people. It's like I need to like be around people, even though I don't necessarily connect with individuals on that level, like, you know, this not often. Definitely not this, but it's still, you need to be around people. It's almost like it's just an energy thing, and you need, it's strange how, again, it like teaches how we are self-centered, so real, like from within, but also from without, like from around you, you know, meaning like you surely need people. And it's just amazing to me. It's the concept they gave me was violin, how the string needs the bow just as much as the bow needs the string, and without either, then they're just both helpless nothings, but together they make beautiful melodies. And I'm like, oh, I always get little downloads like with what I do in life, so gym, violin, etc. But yeah, they gave me that really nice one. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's really true.
It is. I like that. That's nice. That it puts it into one like a very nice like visual, and then also puts it into like a term that we can
Honestly,
understand.
I should have just started the podcast with that, because it was so much more succinct, and I think everyone would have understood it crystal fucking clear, instead of me reading Rudolph Steiner notes and confusing everyone.
I mean, you live and you learn, right? Yeah, it's fine.
I love his notes, but yeah, it's just because I like completely understand it, so I'm like, oh, trying to like explain it is really interesting.
Yeah, especially when like this is conceptual, abstract based anyway, and then like he's like
even
super
more
abstract. Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh.
to the extreme. Yeah. Oh, and he also mentions the Gospel of John. So we have to do Christianity, because I'm going to read something in the Gospel of John and try to almost get that like clairvoyant perception of like what, because I feel that the mythos with Christianity will be so much more easier. I mean, to a certain extent, so much more easier, because everyone can pick up a Bible and buy one, you know. So that one will be more easier. But I wonder how Christians will feel about us calling it mythology. But I mean,
as a former Christian, and a lover of mythology, I see no difference.
I don't either, honestly. It's like, for me, it's just story. It's a beautiful story that, again, teaches morals, values, etc. Like, stories.
Yeah, and that's what all the other mythologies do. So I don't
see a difference.
Yeah, I don't see a difference. And if anything, it's more allegorical based too. So I'm like, well, take your pick. You know, like, I don't know.
You can learn morals from anywhere, basically. Like, and I think that's also what Gnosticism embodied, and why maybe we don't even have a lot of, well, I know why we don't have a lot of text from them, but it's just I feel like they would have that understanding of like the underpinnings of like the moral bed of things, you know?
It's interesting too because they do mention like the apostles, and so they are aware, and they kind of like bridge Gnosticism with Jesus Christ specifically and like his journey, but they don't necessarily believe that he was here to like to die for our sins. Like they acknowledge it, but like they don't, like I forget how they
I mean,
like word it, but it's like different.
for me in my head, if I'm reading this as someone who's never heard of Christianity, a God will send his son to earth, impregnate a lady somehow miraculously, and I'm like, and we all know in Greek mythology how they did it. So like, I don't know. That's what the lady also said. I'm like, but she said that, and I'm like, oh, that's disrespectful. But it's so true. We all know how it worked in Greek mythology. So continuing on, so she got miraculously impregnated, and then he comes here to learn, to grow, whatever. But then he knows his son will die, and he still sends his son. That's from I guess maybe this is why why they say don't have children. Maybe because we do bring our children into this world, you know, knowing like what the fuck is what's happening. But I also feel that I feel that Earth is a school. And I think it takes a special soul. And especially coming through our bodies, meaning like your body, my body, we're divine feminines, I feel, to a certain degree. Again, a really trite word, but we definitely kind of embody that. Divinity will come through our body. So it's like I have like almost no fear for my child to a certain degree because I know how like powerful I am, you know, and I know how powerful you are, and I know how powerful divine feminine energy is in general. And so I have no fear in that aspect, but I also understand the concept of not having, because that I was very fraught, you know, with worrying at one point about like having children and like not wanting them to like experience this. But at the end of the day,
they'll be fine.
they'll be fine. They're strong. You know, they're not resilient, but they're strong.
Exactly. It's weird because I'm like, not only did he like give up his only son, but then in my head I'm like, how is that your only son if we are your children? But whatever. So that's another thing. But you know, the wording of some things,
I never thought about
I'm just like, so is that like your only natural son? Or right, or your favorite son, or are we, because then there's that other process that like we kind of touched on in Zoroastrianism, where it says what's his name, Ahura Mazda made emanations to like go out and like do, you know, do things for him, but they were all like extensions of himself. So is that what we are? And if that's what we are, then we're fucking divine. I'm sorry, like we're extensions of you then, right?
That's what I view all humans as, just because I think Gnosticism really embodies the idea that the divine lives in all, and thus the divine would live in all human beings. Divine living and means that it is the divine, you know? And so I don't, at this point, I understand that there are layers to existence, but I don't make a distinction between this present body, Gina, and then my higher self, and then etc. I don't make much distinction. Even like me,
yeah, they do in Gnosticism. They're like
physical Gina. Just
yeah,
I feel that it's all extension of the divine to a certain extent. And it's just about you almost remembering and needing to like evolve your consciousness back to like having that full remembrance. But it's still going to be, you're still going to be in this shell body basically. And I believe that this body creates a seed for us to almost have an afterlife. So I don't, well, I guess I was told that, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Because I never bought into the idea. First, I never bought into the idea that it was like, I don't know, like a punishment or anything. And I also don't believe in the idea that we should like want to end our incarnations here, because I feel that it's almost saying I can't hack it here, so I want to go back. You know, I don't know. I feel that it takes a certain soul of, and I guess it's remembering that strength that is the real challenge, you know? But I feel that almost is like the divine's way of saying, like, I know you're strong. I know you can do this. And it's like, what the fuck when you're experiencing it, you know? But like I said, our bodies, I believe, create seeds. And I don't know how it's necessarily expressed in the afterlife, but I know that we carry essence, something about this physical essence, not existing just as me, not as my past lives, but just as I'm just Gina. I don't know anything. I'm stupid. You know, I think we carry this essence back with us there. So I don't know. I guess, yeah.
It's interesting because Gnosticism is like the complete opposite. They're like, no, we should have never been in these bodies. Someone fucked up and then created the lower level, and like we shouldn't be here. That's also why they're like, no, we're gonna be celibate. We're not gonna marry because we don't want to trap more divine energy in these bodies. Yeah, and then they're basically like everything that like humans do is just like gross and unnatural. Like, idea, yeah.
I do think to some degree, yes. Like certain things to me are so like eating for me feels kind of unnatural, and like, you know, what every human being does, that feels unnatural to me too.
That's what they brought up. Yeah, that's what I read. I was like, oh, okay, like we shouldn't be expelling, like that shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I guess I could see that. And I'm like,
it's like having a dog, you know, like how I feel like their poops are so unnatural to me. I don't know why. And so, yeah, I'm just like, it's just so weird to me. I'm a very special soul, okay? Very, very
You're like, I wasn't built for this. That's not what I came here for.
I didn't come here to clean up dog shit.
Oh my gosh. You're like, no, that's where I draw the line. That's funny.
But yes.
I mean, I think that's about it, honestly, because everything else is just like we talked about how like it predates Christianity. There were some Jewish agnostics. There were some Greek agnostics. There's a lot of different sects. There's they have similarities with like Buddhism, and then as you were saying, like Asia Minor over there in that area. So that even encompasses as far west of like Iran. So it kind of like goes there through that area as well. The Mediterranean, the Valentinius guy, he was actually born in Egypt, so he's an Egyptian, and like there's just a lot of different conflicting information. And then one thing that I found interesting, which when I was like researching Gnosticism like way before, like when I was like interested in it, I remember that there is this being, she is like the feminine energy of the world. Her name literally means wisdom, and her name is Sophia. And very beautiful name. But it's interesting though, because when I was researching like the 3 texts that I was kind of like getting my notes from, all of them said that she basically created his name is like super hard to pronounce, Ildao or something like that. She created him on his own because for some reason she was the only eon that did. That's the name for like what was created. She was the only one of her kind that didn't get a pairing. I don't know why. Literally everyone else got a pair. So she was like, "What the heck? I'm lonely."
The idea of like separation, like almost how that pervades this specific universe. The idea of separation, how she doesn't have a consort, and how unnatural that is, and how it's kind of unnatural. I don't know. Maybe I'm just putting too much together, but it makes a lot of sense that she's single.
Yeah, and it's interesting because basically, like, she kind of gets blamed for the creation of humans because she doesn't have a consort. So she created her son on her own, and he wasn't all quite there, I guess, and then he creates humanity. And then that's why humanity like sins, or not sins, but that's why like for the Gnostics, that's
And
why
this is
humanity is bad or
what
like not right. But then it was weird because I remember reading about her before, and I don't ever remember that ever coming up. So,
I remember her
and
being revered. Mm.
exactly. So I'm like, why is this story more popular now all of a sudden? It's just weird, and I don't like it. So I just wanted to like bring that up real quick, because when I was like researching before, like, no, like Sophia is the divine energy, feminine energy of the world. They even briefly talk about it, mostly in Judaism and then a little bit in Christianity. But she is good. She is basically the other half of God, and some even consider her to be God, and then God came after. So it's just interesting that like when I was researching it yesterday, they were even like, oh, well, this version is pretty much the version that like that you'll find in like a lot of Gnostic stories. I'm just like, no, because I'm pretty sure when I was researching before, I had never heard
I
that, and
remember
now
her
all of a
always
sudden this
being
is the one that prevails mostly. I'm like, I don't buy it. Something's up, but that's just me because I'm low key
funny we're ending on this note because this is what my guy said, or summarizing. We must be privy to how information is channeled and managed first. And being earnest and honest in research may conflict with societal norms and or what we have available in society, even as well. And so it's just so funny on what you're saying. And literally that's kind of what he said here is kind of like basically I feel at this time I don't want to say we can't trust what we have because I feel there is a certain level of transparency, but we have to also understand we don't know who disseminates the information. And until we know who really has the keys to all of like the information that we can physically like, and we just don't know. Like I know it's like weird to like think that way, but it's just we have to I just want to know where it comes from, and especially as we researching, like especially these cultures, you would think I just would think that there would be so much good information because we have so much means to have information. You would think that that transparency would be there. I would think that there would be a website or something that has literally like every culture like compiled and like if you want to know this is what you can know. Like it's just as we're researching, I'm realizing how much gaps we have just in religious history. So, my God, I can only imagine what gaps we have in actual history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's things that are like coming out now that like they previously thought like wasn't the case, and now they're just like, oh, never mind, actually. And it's just like, you literally said this for like 30 years and you were so, gung-ho that this was right. I'm just like, and then that for me is like sometimes the reason why I have an issue with like scientists or like historians, because I'm like, nothing.
You can't trust them. Basically.
Yeah, I'm just like, you want it so bad, which is it's a good and bad thing. It's a good and bad fault of like humanity, is that like you want something to be true so bad or whatever, so when you find an inkling of it, you just run with it. And I'm guilty of it. I think we all kind of do it, like we get super excited about things and then we forget that, you know what, actually there's a possibility that, just keep this in mind, you know. But for people that are like so smart and supposedly supposed to be like super trusted, I'm just like, y'all be fumbling the
It's just the
ball a
people that
lot.
have the authority don't behave and put out information like they have the actual authority. And I
Right?
and I
That's
feel
like,
that
what are
we
y'all
really
doing?
saw that. I'm not going to mention, but you know what I'm talking about. We really saw
Mm-hmm.
that. And now we're kind of like living almost in the fallout of that, because
Mm-hmm.
I think it's now that we understand, now someone understands how far people are willing to go research wise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like we somewhat of an interesting precedent has been somewhat set. And so I guess we'll see. But yeah, like you were saying, it's just weird to me how I would feel that we would have access to whatever we would want to have, possibly want to have access to on this physical earth,
Mhm.
information wise, because we are in the information age.
Mhm.
It's just not the case.
But no, nope, that's not
When it's
the
like
case.
stupid shit, you don't need to know, like, I don't know what's happening, you can know it, but like when it's okay, let's look at history. Let's look at really like interesting, deep concepts that predate a lot of things, and it's just not much.
Mm-mm.
And what we
There's
have, I
not much.
feel, is just disseminated in a way that seems almost a little bit too controlled at this point. And I just
Yeah, it's like it's very what's the word? It's organized in its disorganization, if that makes sense. Like it's almost like too neatly, like, oh, it's like perfect that we're missing this gap here, but all this is good. And then like we're missing this gap here. It's almost as if like someone was like, oh, take that out, but make it look like, we just naturally lost it to history.
literally he
And
was
like I'm just like, it's weird.
he said in this that a lot of the information is redacted. A lot of the information is just we don't
I
have
mean,
access
we
to.
we know that now. Like,
And it's
there's so many things that like, or it's like, oh well, this actually isn't true, and then it comes out later. Like the government does that with everything. We
everything.
have like Project Paperclip or like all these other like projects that like come out like 50 years later, be like, yeah, we did this. Our bad. Everyone said that we did this, and
There
now
was
we're coming out and be like, yeah, we did.
apparently there was I didn't watch the video, so I didn't do any research. I should probably watch it and then like try to like share it, but prematurely I'm sharing it. Grain of salt, guys. CIA did research for psychics. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
This is really interesting. I mean, I think we all like subconsciously would like kind of put two and two together.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's just kind of like a certain depth that you would have to like work past to be able to even think about the CIA wanting to do experiments with psychics. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, they have
Now
all
I wonder if that's the same thing that they were doing with people and giving them LSD, or is that like two totally different things? Because I know that they were giving people LSD to see if like it could unlock like parts of their mind so they could become like clairvoyant or something, or like give them powers. And apparently though it did kind of work for some of the test subjects, so I wonder if like those are just two different things. If they were like, oh, we have psychics, we have people that like do this naturally, let's study them and then let's see how we can recreate it. I don't know if that's like the same thing or not, but I mean they be doing weird shit all the time, so I'm just like, and you can't even say that's a conspiracy theory because you can go look that up. You can Google it and be like, yeah, it's like right there on the CIA like archival. Like it's there,
And it's just it's an interesting world that we live in, and I don't think we even know a hint of it. We know nothing, and I feel
yeah.
part of it is because we are we are collectively sleeping to a certain degree, but I also feel like a lot of our knowledge has been kept by people who are
Intentionally kept by.
initiated or initiate,
Mm-hmm.
and then that information is withheld. And yeah, and I believe we're not going to get into that.
I know. I feel like one day. I know. Because I was gonna mention like the Vatican archives, like what's in those things, like everyone. And then I'm like, if it's just like really old books, like why are you like always so like no one can go in? Like there's been people that like try to like sneak in and then like they get arrested, and I'm just like, if it's just like old dusty manuscripts from like different religions or whatever, why? But like the things that like are supposedly in there, like I don't know.
What
But
are they hiding, their rituals that they do? Where are they hiding?
right, and we have no idea. I don't know.
I do.
But this was a good one.
I love how we end on such a just this one I feel was just so like we know nothing, and we're telling you a little bits of what we know, but really we know nothing. And I almost feel that kind of encompasses a lot of our human experience. And I'm not saying day to day, but I just feel like
overall.
And I feel we could just be so much more cohesive as a collective. We could be so much more in tune. And I feel that idealism, what Earth could be, is almost being hidden from us to a certain degree.
What Earth could be, what we could be.
What
Like,
we
do
could,
we even need half the shit that we have? Like, is it just here as distractions? Like, it's supposedly making our lives better, but then it's also like, you know, taking us away from like our natural instincts of like our intuition and like being with nature. So I'm just like, I don't know.
it's like you see benefits of everything, but then you also see like the drawbacks, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing for sure. I do know that, like, I don't know, I feel like maybe I would want to like revisit Gnosticism again, but this time instead of Googling, I would just
So what else is there to find, you know?
I was gonna say, like, instead of like Googling, maybe like watch videos instead, because I know I've seen videos before and those were a little bit more cohesive.
Oh, and yeah, I could possibly also check different platforms besides YouTube.
Yeah. Because for the last 3 that I've gotten my information on, like the last 3 topics of ours, I've gone to history.com, Britannica.uk or whatever, and then there is one more.
Their information is so off.
Yeah, and then that's what I'm just like, I'm writing this shit down. I'm just like, I remember kind of like looking at this information before, and I was like, I don't think that's right, but you know, I can't find what I thought it was, so I'm gonna just write it down anyway, and then you know, present it and just be like, well, I don't remember it being this way, but this is what it said, you know?
It's off. Yeah, the information definitely is off. And like as I'm reading it, I'm like, it's like it's just like you were saying, it's almost too perfect, but then it's also like things are missing. And so it's like you're reading like almost a book that has like it's like for someone who's really intelligent, you can just kind of honestly just tell them this is off. It's been redacted. It's been something is amiss. Something is awry here. Yeah, and especially with I guess it surprises me, but not really. But a site like Britannica is very like well known, well respected. Like that could be a primary source for someone's paper, for example, and then still shit. So it's
basically pretty much.
It's an interesting world we live in, I guess, because
it definitely is.
You have access to so much, but so little at the same time. It's like, okay, what is that? Quantity over quality, and then when we get, and there's no quality. All right, so I think that will be it because we are at a little past time. But I love how we've had so much to talk about, even though I feel like I found nothing.
I know. That's what like all of them, like the last few recently. I'm just kind of like, okay, you know.
It was Chinese and Egyptian, I think it was.
Yeah.
I really like Egyptian mythology. Honestly, that will be a fun one to revisit eventually too, because that one I felt so connected to the overall energy of Egypt. So I know I probably have incarnation there as well. Because I just felt really connected, you know? And look at all those notes I took. I'm like, wow, look at all you found compared to this one. I'm like,
I know. Yeah, that one. And then that's the other thing. Like, why is some information so much more robust than others? You know, like everyone, you know, has something on like Egyptian mythology. I couldn't go to a website without finding something different than the last one. So it's just interesting how like that happens too. Like, is there a reason why this one, you know, gets pushed a little bit more? Is this like a safer religion? I don't know.
I think so. I think there are certain religions that they want to promote. And then like I don't feel that Gnosticism is like better, but I feel that it's more, it has a level of being very organic, and even as well. There's this level of being very organic, but also involving just like a certain level of realness. Versus, I'm not saying Egyptian is like super like fake or anything, but it's just you're hitting it on the head when you're saying they do promote or almost. So it's really subconscious. They almost subconsciously promote certain ideas, certain like how we have 1,000 Egyptian movies or something, or how we just have like certain things pervade our culture and other things don't. And I always wonder. You always wonder.
Sorry. Perfect example though. I remember being in 6th grade, and like I had an English teacher. She also doubled as like a history teacher. Could not stand her. But anyway, so we were doing Mesopotamia, and I kid you not, when we were doing, and at that point in time, I'm already like, I had already done like mythology, like research, like on my own. I've always loved mythology, but
Like, I'm
that
on it.
one in particular, she made so boring.
Mm-hmm.
But then it wasn't, and then like I grew up like hating Mesopotamia because like it was so boring. Like everything that they gave was just kind of like, it was
Oh,
just very wholesome and
you're
dry.
so. I'm just putting together what you're saying. You're so right. I remember learning about Mesopotamia and one of those
And
classes. And
what was
yeah,
his
the way that
name?
you say it is
The guy
just
that did his own like commandments, Hammurabi.
yeah.
Like he had his own commandments or like codes or whatever, and like it was like I think there's like 27. I think there's more than like just like 10, but he should have been more interesting than what we were given. Like that whole area, especially because like it connected a lot with like Zoroastrianism, Babylonian, like Chaldean like stuff. And that shit was so boring. And then I get older and I do my own research and I'm like, wait a minute, this shit's exciting. So I'm like, did you do it on purpose?
I 1,000% agree. Like I was saying, when we were learning the stuff in school, it just had a they don't include the occult implications. And
Even though they do with the Egyptian. And I'm like, why?
that's it's very, very strange how it's almost a centerpiece in their culture and we're not including that in learning.
Mm-hmm.
And even with Greek, all major religions have more so of the cult. And you would just think that this would be something that they would want to teach us. I mean, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why they would teach us one part but not the whole part. So what's the
Mm-hmm.
difference? Why aren't we
And it's
learning?
interesting though, because like they even do it with like Celtic and like their like religion and like their occult like ceremonies and like information and like their mythologies, and like they literally always just chalk it up to like, oh, it's pagan. So like they just kind of like throw that word at you, and then it's like most of us are Christian and Catholic, so when we hear
So
pagan, we
oh,
automatically want to shut off. And I
exactly.
think that's what they were doing.
I
They're just like,
think
oh, it's pagan. Here you go. And then like they'll like do like brief things, and then like that's it. I'm like, that's like so fucked up. Like
it
there's
is.
good information because a lot of it is like it's like self-centered in a way where it's like no, like you have everything that you need. You just need to like find it and like be connected to it. With like Mesopotamia, like Celtic and like that type of like culture too. And it's just interesting how it's just like, nope, pagan. We don't want to talk about it too much. Here you go. And then it's just like, wow,
And then our
really?
brains, like you're saying, because a lot of us, all of us practically are Christian, when you hear that word, it's like, oh, that's not something you entertain. That's something that can send you to hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just like you
My
shock
mind is
immediately.
blown right now because honestly, why did we learn about these religions, but we did not learn about the occult practices and what is the line of delineation there? Like why would we learn about one facet but not the other when they're both connected? That's
Mm-hmm. And if anything, it makes the information what's the word not as easy to understand because like you kind of feel like you didn't get all of it. Like
and
that's why I was like it's boring and confusing. Like that was my takeaway from like Mesopotamia. I was like, I'm bored and I'm confused. Like I don't get it. Like who is this guy? Like what? Like and then like that also has ties with that story of like Gilgamesh, who apparently they also say was a real person, but like not a real person, and like he might have been a giant, and then it connects it back to giants, and like I'm just like, this is probably why they fucking didn't tell us anything, because they were like, oh well, giants don't exist, but giants exist, and then like a whole bunch of other weird shit. I don't fucking know, man. I don't know.
yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. But I think we will in today's podcast.
Yes, because if not, it'll be another 30 minutes of like, why?
Yeah, because it's the whys in this universe are so pervasive, and the actual questions to those answers just seem just to not exist. And
No.
we're just supposed to be like, haha, just shut
Yeah,
up, pay your
yeah,
taxes, worship God, don't ask me
yeah.
any questions.
Basically.
basically. But yes,
Goodness.
lovely souls. Thank you guys so much for joining this really interesting but awesome episode of our podcast, The Spiritual Hour. My name is
Yeah.
Gina.
I'm Anna. I feel like most of the time we just ramble. So I hope it makes sense for the two people that are watching right now. Sorry if it doesn't.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah. All right. We'll see y'all next week. Possibly African mythology or Christianity. We'll figure it out. All right.
Namaste.
Bye.